After a long, exhausting shift, Naomi, a black janitor, was heading back to the supply closet when doctors suddenly rushed past her, shouting that a newly admitted patient needed the rarest blood type in the world. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and said she could help. Moments later, a chair was pulled out, a needle was inserted into her arm, and as the blood bag filled, Naomi assumed that would be the end of it. But the next morning, as she arrived at the hospital gates, a luxury car pulled up right in front of her, carrying a message that would change the course of Naomi's life in ways she never expected. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Atlanta General Hospital buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Naomi Carter's knees ached from 8 straight hours of mopping floors, but she couldn't leave yet. Not when Mia was still waiting in the pediatric clinic for her prescription. She wrung out her mop into the yellow bucket, watching dirty water swirl down the drain. Her hands were raw, the skin cracked around her knuckles. 29 years old, and her hands looked 50. Code Blue Trauma 1, Code Blue Trauma 1. The announcement shattered the relative quiet of the third-floor corridor. Naomi stepped back as a team of doctors and nurses sprinted past her, their shoes squeaking against the floor she'd just cleaned. She pressed herself against the wall, invisible as always. Through the chaos, she caught fragments of urgent conversation. Motor vehicle accident, massive internal bleeding. Get me 4 units of O-negative stat. Wait, check her chart again. What's her blood type? Naomi pushed her cart toward the supply closet, but something made her pause. Maybe it was the panic in their voices. Maybe it was the way one doctor's hands were shaking as he flipped through papers. Arnull, a nurse said, her voice climbing an octave. Oh God, she's Renull. The words hit Naomi like a physical blow. Her mop clattered against the cart. Renull, golden blood, the rarest blood type on Earth. The same blood type flowing through her veins right now. How much do we have in reserve? The lead doctor barked. None. We're completely out. The nearest supply is in Boston, but even by helicopter. She doesn't have 4 hours. She'll be dead in 30 minutes. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. She should walk away. She should go get Mia and leave this place like she did every night. Rich people had rich people problems, and she had her own. But her feet wouldn't move. She thought about the bill sitting in her purse. $300 for Mia's asthma medication. $300 she didn't have. The pharmacist had looked at her with such pity when she'd asked about payment plans. Ma'am, I need you to clear this area, a security guard said, gesturing toward her cart. Naomi opened her mouth to apologize, to disappear like she always did, but instead, different words came out. I have that blood. The guard blinked. What? Renull. I have it. Her voice was stronger now, cutting through the controlled chaos of the trauma bay. I can donate. Right now. The lead doctor's head snapped toward her. He was young, maybe 35, with tired eyes that suddenly sparked with desperate hope. You're sure Retinol is incredibly rare, and we need to verify? I'm sure. I've known since I was 16. Naomi abandoned her cart and walked toward them, each step feeling surreal. I can give blood. How much do you need? Within minutes, she was in a chair, a needle in her arm. No one asked about her janitor's uniform or why she was there. They only cared about the dark red blood flowing through the tube. What's your hemoglobin level? A nurse asked, checking Naomi's vitals with quick, efficient movements. I don't know. The nurse's eyebrows drew together. When was your last physical? 2 years ago. Naomi didn't mention it was at a free clinic or that she'd skipped every follow-up appointment because she couldn't afford to miss work. Your blood pressure is low, and you look pale. Have you been eating properly? Naomi almost laughed. Eating properly. When had she last eaten anything that wasn't left over from Mia's plate? I'm fine, she lied. Through the window, she could see into the trauma bay. A woman lay on the table surrounded by machines and urgent hands. Even from here, even through the chaos, Naomi could tell this was someone important. The kind of person who wore clothes that cost more than Naomi's monthly rent. The kind of person who probably never worried about choosing between electricity and groceries. That's Charlotte Whitmore, the nurse murmured, following Naomi's gaze. The tech CEO. Her company just went public last year. She's worth billions. Billions. Naomi couldn't even imagine that much money. She watched another bag of her blood get rushed into the trauma bay. Ma'am, your heart rate is dropping. We need to stop the donation. No. Naomi gripped the armrest. How much more does she need? You've already given enough. Your body. How much more? The nurse hesitated, glancing at the monitor. One more unit would be ideal, but I really don't recommend. Take it. The room tilted slightly. Naomi blinked hard, trying to focus. Somewhere down the hall, Mia was waiting. Mia always waited so patiently, reading her library books in the hard plastic chairs, never complaining, even when the appointments ran hours late. What kind of mother was she giving blood to a stranger when she should be taking care of her daughter? But what kind of person would she be if she walked away? Mommy! Naomi's eyes flew open. Mia stood in the doorway, her pink backpack hanging off one shoulder, her library book clutched in her small hands. A nurse hovered behind her, apologetic. She insisted on finding you. Said it was past your usual meeting time. Baby, I'm okay. Naomi forced a smile even as another wave of dizziness washed over her. I'm just helping the doctors for a minute. Can you wait right outside? I'll be done soon. Mia's dark eyes were too knowing for a 7-year-old. She'd seen her mother exhausted too many times to be fooled, but she nodded and stepped back into the hallway, settling onto a bench with her book. Good girl. Always such a good girl. That's enough, the doctor said firmly, removing the needle. You need juice and rest. We're running your blood work now, but I'm concerned about your iron levels. Naomi pressed the cotton ball against her arm. Will she live, the woman in there? The doctor's expression softened. Because of you. Yes, she has a chance now. A chance. That was all anyone could ask for, really. Naomi stood up too quickly. The floor lurched beneath her feet, and suddenly the doctor's hands were on her shoulders, guiding her back down. You need to rest for at least 20 minutes. And drink this. He pressed a juice box into her hand, the kind with the cartoon characters that Mia loved. I'm serious. You just gave blood while anemic. That's incredibly dangerous. I have to get my daughter home. Your daughter can wait 20 minutes. I'll have someone bring her a snack. The world swam in and out of focus. Naomi tried to stand again, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Through the window, she could see the flurry of activity around Charlotte Whitmore beginning to slow, becoming more controlled. The panic was ebbing. She was going to live. A stranger was going to live because Naomi had stopped mopping floors for an hour. The woman you saved, the doctor said quietly, pulling up a chair beside her. She came in alone. No family, no emergency contacts responded. The only person who came running was her assistant, and even he seemed more worried about stock prices than her life. He paused. But you, a complete stranger, you gave your blood without hesitation. Why? Naomi took a long sip of the too sweet juice. Because someone should care if she lives or dies. Everyone should have that. The doctor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're a good person, Miss Carter. Naomi Carter. Well, Miss Carter, you should know that what you did today is extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Naomi didn't feel extraordinary. She felt dizzy and exhausted and worried about how she'd make it through her shift tomorrow when she could barely stand right now. But through the window, she watched Charlotte Whitmore's chest rise and fall with steady breaths. Alive. Fighting. Surviving. Maybe that was worth feeling like garbage for a day or two. Can I go now? The doctor checked his watch. 5 more minutes, please. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. Naomi watched Mia through the doorway, her daughter's head bent over her book, completely absorbed in whatever adventure was happening on those pages. She'd given Mia that a love of stories, of worlds beyond their cramped apartment, and endless struggles. She'd given Mia safety even when it cost everything. And today, she'd given a billionaire stranger the same thing, a chance to keep living, to keep breathing, to wake up tomorrow. The world didn't make sense sometimes, but maybe it didn't have to. Maybe all that mattered was the choice you made when someone needed help, even if your hands were raw and your body was exhausted and your own daughter was waiting to go home. Especially then. Naomi stood up slowly, testing her legs. The room stayed mostly still this time. Thank you, the doctor said. Seriously, thank you. She nodded and walked toward Mia, each step deliberate. Her daughter looked up and smiled that beautiful gap-toothed smile that made everything worthwhile. Ready, baby? Ready, mommy. They walked past the trauma bay, past the machines and monitors and people in scrubs, past Charlotte Whitmore, who breathed steadily now, color returning to her face, past the cart with Naomi's mop and bucket waiting right where she'd left them. Tomorrow she'd come back and finish her shift. Tomorrow she'd figure out how to pay for Mia's medication. Tomorrow she'd worry about bills and rent and all the crushing weight of survival. But tonight, someone was alive who shouldn't be. And Naomi Carter, janitor and single mother with cracked hands and an empty bank account, had made that happen. The story broke 3 days later. Naomi was scrubbing toilets in the hospital's West Wing when her supervisor's phone started buzzing nonstop. She didn't think much of it until Linda stuck her head into the bathroom, her face pale. "Naomi, you need to come see this." In the break room, a dozen staff members crowded around someone's tablet. They parted when Naomi approached, their expressions ranging from shock to something that looked uncomfortably like awe. The headline blazed across the screen: "Single Mother Saves Tech Billionaire with World's Rarest Blood." Below it, 2 photos side by side. On the left, Charlotte Whitmore at some gala, dripping in diamonds and confidence. On the right, a grainy security camera image of Naomi in her janitor's uniform pushing her cart down a hospital corridor. "Oh, God," Naomi whispered. "There's more," Linda said, scrolling down. The article detailed everything: Charlotte's net worth, her company's recent IPO, the desperate search for renal blood. And then, Naomi's part-single mother works 2 jobs, lives in subsidized housing, couldn't afford her daughter's medication. Someone had talked, probably the nurse who'd checked her vitals. "You're famous," one of the younger janitors said, almost excited. "This is incredible. Do you know how many people are sharing this?" Naomi's phone, which she'd left in her locker, had 17 missed calls when she finally checked it. News stations, talk shows, a podcast about extraordinary acts of kindness. She ignored all of them and went back to work. By the end of her shift, there were reporters in the parking lot. "Miss Carter, can you tell us what went through your mind when you decided to donate? How does it feel to save a billionaire's life? Have you heard from Charlotte Whitmore yet?" Naomi kept her head down, keys clutched tight in her fist. She'd parked in the far corner like always, where the lot was poorly lit and the asphalt had more holes than pavement. Now she regretted it. "Please, just one comment. My daughter is waiting for me at daycare," Naomi said without stopping. "I'm already late. I have nothing to say." She drove away with her hands shaking on the wheel, watching the reporters shrink in her rearview mirror. This would blow over. It had to. In a week, some celebrity would do something stupid, and everyone would forget about the janitor who donated blood. She was wrong. The next morning, a black Mercedes was parked outside her apartment building. Naomi almost kept walking, but the back door opened, and a woman in an expensive suit stepped out. "Miss Carter, I'm Susan Morrison, executive assistant to Charlotte Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore would like to meet you." "I don't think that's necessary. She's waiting at the hospital." She insisted. Susan's smile was professional but warm. "She's quite persistent when she wants something. 5 minutes of your time. That's all she's asking." Naomi thought about the 17 messages on her phone, the reporters who'd probably be back tonight, the way her neighbors had stared at her this morning, whispering behind their hands. Maybe meeting the woman would end this circus. 5 minutes, she agreed. Charlotte Whitmore's hospital room looked nothing like the rest of Atlanta General. Someone had brought in real furniture, a leather chair, actual artwork on the walls, flowers that didn't come from the gift shop. The woman herself sat propped against pillows, her silver hair styled. Despite the hospital gown, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Miss Carter." Charlotte's voice was stronger than Naomi expected. "Please sit." Naomi remained standing. "I'm glad you're recovering." "Thanks to you." Charlotte studied her with unnerving intensity. "Do you know what the survival rate is for my type of internal bleeding without compatible blood? 3%? You gave me my life back. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did." Charlotte gestured to the chair again. "Please, I may be recovering, but I'm still injured and craning my neck hurts." Naomi sat more out of politeness than comfort. "I've had my people look into your situation," Charlotte said bluntly. "You work 2 jobs, 70-hour weeks. You have $3,000 in medical debt from your daughter's asthma treatments. Your rent is overdue. Again." Heat flooded Naomi's face. "You had no right. I had every right. You saved my life. I wanted to understand what that cost you." Charlotte leaned forward slightly. "The nurse told me you were anemic when you donated. You could have collapsed. You could have seriously harmed yourself. But you did it anyway. Why? Because you needed help. I'm a stranger. A rich stranger who will never understand what it's like to choose between medication and groceries." "You're still a person," Naomi said quietly, "and you were dying. The money in your bank account doesn't change that." Something flickered across Charlotte's face, surprise maybe, or recognition. She reached for the folder on her bedside table and held it out. "This is for you." Naomi didn't take it. "If that's money, I don't want it." "It's not charity. Consider it a thank you." "I didn't save your life for a reward." "I know." Charlotte's smile was thin. "That's exactly why I'm giving you one. Open it." Against her better judgment, Naomi took the folder. Inside were documents, a lot of documents. A bank statement showing a paid-off medical debt, a receipt for 3 months of advance rent, a scholarship application to Emory University already filled out in Mia's name with a note for when she's ready. "I can't accept this," Naomi said, but her voice cracked. "You already did. The payments were processed yesterday." Charlotte settled back against her pillows. "I don't believe in owing debts, Miss Carter. You gave me something priceless. I'm simply balancing the scales. This is more than balancing. This is—" Naomi's hands trembled as she closed the folder. "This is too much. It's barely anything to me, but it matters to you, doesn't it?" It mattered more than Charlotte could possibly understand. It mattered like breathing mattered, but accepting it felt wrong somehow, like taking advantage of a desperate moment. "I need to think about this," Naomi said. "Think all you want. The debt is paid regardless." Charlotte's expression softened slightly. "I was you once, you know. Not the exact circumstances, but close enough. Single mother working myself to exhaustion, convinced I had to do everything alone because asking for help meant weakness." Naomi looked up sharply. "I never said—" "You didn't have to." I recognized the look. Charlotte's eyes held a strange mixture of respect and sadness. "The difference between us is that someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. An investor who believed in my prototype when everyone else laughed me out of their offices. That one chance changed everything. I'm not asking you to invest in me." "I know, but I'm offering anyway." Charlotte reached for her water glass, and Naomi noticed how her hands shook slightly. Still recovering, still vulnerable. "The world tried to tell me I couldn't succeed because I was a woman in tech, because I was raising a daughter alone, because I didn't have the right connections. I proved them wrong, but it was brutal and lonely. I see that same fire in you, Miss Carter. That same determination to survive no matter what." "Surviving isn't the same as thriving." "No," Charlotte agreed. "But it's the first step." The next 2 weeks proved Charlotte right about one thing. The world loved a good story, but it loved controversy even more. It started with a blog post by someone named Marcus Chen, a tech journalist who specialized in exposing corporate corruption. His article carried the headline, "Billionaire's Convenient Savior, the Strange Story of Charlotte Whitmore's Miraculous Recovery." Naomi read it during her lunch break, sitting in her car with cold French fries from McDonald's. While the heartwarming narrative of a selfless janitor saving a dying CEO captures headlines, questions remain unanswered. Why did Charlotte Whitmore immediately pay off Naomi Carter's debts? What assurances did she receive in return? And most concerning, why has Miss Carter, who supposedly saved Mrs. Whitmore out of pure altruism, suddenly been offered a position at the Whitmore Foundation? The article continued, each paragraph more poisonous than the last. It questioned Naomi's motives, her timing, even the validity of her blood type. It suggested she'd researched Charlotte beforehand, that she'd positioned herself to be in the right place at the right time. It painted her as a con artist. Naomi's phone rang. Linda, her supervisor. "I'm sorry, Naomi, they're letting you go." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "Corporate called. They said the media attention is disrupting hospital operations. Too many reporters, too many questions. They're offering 2 weeks severance, but they want you out today." "Linda, I've worked here for 3 years. I know. I fought them on it. But it's out of my hands." Linda's voice was genuinely apologetic. "I'm so sorry." Naomi sat in her car for a long time after the call ended, watching people come and go from the hospital. Her hospital, where she'd mopped floors and cleaned bathrooms and made everything shine, even though most people never noticed. Gone. Just like that. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her landlord. "Reporters were here, asking questions about you. Other tenants are complaining. We need to talk." Then another message, this one from Mia's school. "Several media outlets have attempted to access the premises, asking for your daughter. We've denied entry, but we recommend picking Mia up early today." The world was closing in. Naomi drove to Mia's school on autopilot. She found her daughter in the principal's office, reading quietly, while 2 administrators stood guard at the door. "Mommy!" Mia jumped up, wrapping her arms around Naomi's waist. "They said I had to wait here today. Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, baby." Naomi smoothed Mia's hair back from her face. "We're just going to have a special afternoon together, okay?" In the car, Mia was quiet for a while before asking, "Are those people still talking about you on TV?" "Some of them, yeah. Miss Robinson said you're a hero." "Miss Robinson is very kind. But you are a hero, right? You saved that lady's life." Naomi glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror, 7 years old and already learning that doing the right thing could complicate everything. "I helped someone who needed help," Naomi said carefully. "That's all." "Then why are people being mean about it?" "Because the world is complicated and unfair," Naomi thought. "Because some people can't accept that poor people might do good things without wanting something in return. Because they need to tear down anything that challenges their assumptions." Sometimes Naomi said instead, "People don't understand things, and when they don't understand, they make up stories." That's not very nice. No, baby, it's not. They went home to their small apartment, and Naomi triple-checked that the door was locked. She closed the blinds, even though it made the place feel like a cave. Outside, she could hear voices, more reporters probably, or maybe just curious neighbors. She made grilled cheese for dinner because it was cheap and filling and Mia's favorite. They ate in front of the TV with the sound turned low, watching a cartoon about a talking dog who solved mysteries. Naomi's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers. Messages from people she barely knew suddenly interested in her life. A producer from a morning show offering an opportunity to tell your side of the story. A literary agent who wanted to discuss a book deal. And one message from Susan Morrison, "Mrs. Whitmore would like to see you again. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. It's important." Naomi deleted most of the messages but kept that last one. That night after Mia fell asleep, Naomi sat at their tiny kitchen table and did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She cried, not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that slid down her face and dripped onto the Formica surface. She'd done the right thing. She knew she had. So why did it feel like everything was falling apart? The next morning, Susan picked her up in the Mercedes again. This time, they didn't go to the hospital. They drove to a neighborhood Naomi had only seen in magazines. Tree-lined streets, massive houses set back from the road gates that required codes to enter. Charlotte's home was more modest than Naomi expected, though modest was relative when the place still had 3 stories and a circular driveway. Susan led her inside through rooms filled with expensive furniture and modern art that probably cost more than Naomi's entire life savings. But there were also personal touches, photos of a young girl at various ages, books stacked on every available surface, a coffee mug abandoned on a side table. Charlotte waited in a sunroom that overlooked a garden. She looked better than she had in the hospital, dressed in casual clothes that still managed to look expensive. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming." Charlotte gestured to a chair. "Coffee, tea?" "I'm fine." Naomi sat back, straight hands folded in her lap. "What's this about? I assume you've seen the articles." "Some of them." "Then you know they're calling you a gold digger, a con artist, and several other colorful terms." Charlotte's tone was matter of fact. "My board of directors is concerned. They think I'm being manipulated. They're threatening to challenge my decisions regarding the foundation." "Then maybe I should just disappear," Naomi said. "Give the money back, move to another city." "Absolutely not." Charlotte's voice was sharp. "That's exactly what they want. They want you to run so they can say I was duped by a clever opportunist. But I wasn't duped, Miss Carter. I made a choice and I stand by it." "Your standing by it is costing me everything. I lost my job yesterday." Charlotte's expression tightened. "I heard. I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened. But it did. And my landlord wants me out because reporters are bothering other tenants. And Mia's school is asking if maybe I should find alternative arrangements for the rest of the semester." Naomi's voice was steady, but barely. "Your charity is destroying my life." "It's not charity, and it's not destroying anything they are." Charlotte leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully. What you're experiencing right now, I went through worse when I started my company. People said I slept my way to funding. They said my ex-husband deserved credit for my work. They said I was an affirmative action hire who got lucky. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. They attack what they can't control or understand." Charlotte's eyes were fierce. "The difference is I had resources to fight back. You don't. Not yet. I don't want to fight. I just want my normal life back." Your normal life was working yourself to death for poverty wages while your daughter went without basic medical care. Charlotte's words were blunt, but not unkind. That's not a life worth going back to, Miss Carter. That's survival, not living. Naomi stood abruptly. You don't get to tell me what my life is worth. You're right, I don't. Charlotte stood too slower still, favoring her left side. But I can offer you a choice. Walk away right now, and I'll respect that. The debt payments stand regardless. Consider them a thank you for saving my life. Or, she paused, or you can let me teach you how to fight back. Fight how? By showing them exactly who you are. Not the caricature they've created, but the real woman who made an impossible choice in an impossible moment. Charlotte moved to a desk and picked up a folder. I'm offering you a position as Community Outreach Director for the Whitmore Foundation. Real job, real salary, real responsibilities. You'll work with underprivileged communities to identify needs and allocate resources. Naomi stared at her. I'm a janitor. I don't have a college degree. You have something more valuable than a degree. You understand what it means to need help because you've lived it. You know which programs actually work because you've relied on them. Charlotte held out the folder. I'm not offering this out of pity. I'm offering it because you're exactly the person I need for this role. No one will take me seriously. Not at first, no. They'll say I hired you out of guilt or obligation, but we'll prove them wrong, Miss Carter. Together. Naomi took the folder with numb hands. Inside was a job description, a salary that made her dizzy, $60,000 a year, plus benefits, and a start date 1 week away. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Charlotte was silent for a long moment. Because 30 years ago, someone told me I'd never amount to anything, that single mothers from broken homes don't build successful companies, and I believed them, Miss Carter. I almost gave up. Her expression was distant, remembering. But one person saw something in me. One person gave me a chance when everyone else saw only limitations. And you think I'm like you? I think you're stronger than you know. And I think watching you fail because you dared to save my life would be the greatest injustice of all. Naomi looked down at the folder at the future being offered. A real salary, health insurance for Mia, a job that mattered. But accepting meant stepping into Charlotte's world, a world that had already shown its teeth. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. Take the weekend. Charlotte walked her to the door. But Miss Carter, whatever you decide, don't let them make you small. You're worth more than that. Naomi spent the weekend researching everything she could about Charlotte Whitmore. The articles painted a familiar picture, brilliant, ruthless, calculating. A woman who'd built a tech empire from nothing, who'd outlasted 3 economic downturns and countless attempts to discredit her. But between the lines, Naomi saw something else, a woman who'd fought for every inch of respect, who'd been underestimated and dismissed, and proven wrong again and again. A woman who'd survived by refusing to stay down. On Sunday evening, Naomi called the number Susan had given her. I'll take the job, she said, but I have conditions. Charlotte actually laughed. I wouldn't expect anything less. What are your terms? First, I do the work. Real work. I'm not a token hire or a publicity stunt. If I'm not good at this, you fire me. Agreed. Second, Mia stays out of this. Completely. No media appearances, no photo ops, nothing. She's 7. She deserves a normal childhood. Absolutely agreed. And third, Naomi took a breath. You teach me everything. How to talk to these people, how to handle the media, how to do this job right. I don't want special treatment, but I need training. Miss Carter, that's not a condition. That's exactly what I plan to offer. Charlotte's voice warmed. When can you start? Tomorrow. Eager. I like it. Susan will pick you up at 7. The next morning, Naomi stood in front of her closet and realized she owned exactly 2 outfits that weren't work uniforms or yoga pants. She chose the better of the 2 black slacks and a blue blouse she'd bought for a job interview 3 years ago. Susan took one look at her and made a phone call. We're making a stop first, she said. The stop turned out to be a boutique in Buckhead, where the price tags made Naomi's stomach hurt. A personal shopper named Darcy descended on her with terrifying efficiency. Mrs. Whitmore called ahead, Darcy explained, circling Naomi with a critical eye. She wants you outfitted for professional environments. 3 full looks to start business, formal business, casual, and smart casual. We'll add more as needed. I can't afford. It's part of your employment package. Professional wardrobe allowance. Susan was already browsing a rack of blazers. Every executive gets one. 2 hours later, Naomi emerged wearing clothes that fit properly for the first time in years. Gray slacks that didn't bag at the knees, a white silk blouse that made her feel competent, a blazer that transformed her from invisible to present. "Better," Susan said approvingly. "Now let's go meet your new boss." The Whitmore Foundation occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Midtown. The lobby was all glass and steel, intimidating in its modernity. Naomi's reflection stared back at her from a dozen surfaces, a stranger in expensive clothes pretending to belong. Charlotte's office was surprisingly warm, plants everywhere, comfortable furniture, windows that overlooked the city. Charlotte herself sat behind a desk, fully back to work, despite doctor's orders. "You're supposed to be resting," Susan said disapprovingly. "I'm resting in my office instead of at home. That's a compromise." Charlotte looked up and smiled. "Miss Carter, you look ready to work." "I am." Naomi's voice was steadier than she felt. "Good, because we have a problem." Charlotte pulled up several news articles on her computer screen. "Charles Brenner, my VP of Operations, has been talking to reporters. Nothing actionable, but enough to keep the story alive. He's claiming I'm having some kind of breakdown, that the accident affected my judgment." "Why would he do that?" "Because he's been angling for my position for 5 years, and he thinks this is his chance." Charlotte's expression was grim. "The board meets in 2 weeks. He's going to propose I step down temporarily for health reasons, with him taking over as interim CEO. Can he do that?" "He can try. He has 3 board members in his pocket, and he needs 5 votes to force the issue." Charlotte stood and walked to the window. "Which is why I need you visible and competent immediately. I need the board to see that my decisions are sound, that hiring you makes strategic sense." "No pressure or anything," Naomi muttered. Charlotte actually smiled. "Welcome to the top, Miss Carter. It's all pressure from here." The next week was brutal. Charlotte started each morning at 6 with a meeting about foundation projects, domestic violence shelters, job training programs, education initiatives. Naomi took notes frantically, trying to absorb everything. Then came media training. A consultant named Jerome drilled her on how to answer hostile questions, how to control an interview, how to protect her privacy while remaining accessible. Someone asks about your daughter. You say, "My family life is private, but I appreciate the interest." Then pivot immediately to foundation work. Jerome's delivery was crisp. Never get defensive. Never overshare. Give them nothing they can weaponize. In the afternoons, Charlotte took her to meetings with donors, policymakers, community leaders. Naomi mostly listened, watching Charlotte work, how she read a room, how she knew when to push, and when to concede, how she commanded respect without demanding it. "You're learning," Charlotte said one evening after a particularly difficult meeting with a congressman who'd spent the entire time mansplaining poverty to Naomi. "I saw you stop yourself from snapping at him 3 times. He was insufferable." "He's also critical to getting funding for our housing initiative. Sometimes insufferable people have useful votes." Charlotte poured them both coffee from the machine in her office. "But you were right about the job placement program. His numbers were completely wrong." "I didn't correct him." "You didn't have to. I did." Charlotte smiled slightly. "That's how partnerships work, Miss Carter. You see the problem, I deliver the correction. He saves face. We get what we need." "It feels like game playing." "It is game playing, but the stakes are real." Charlotte sat back in her chair. "Every dollar we secure helps real people. So, yes, we play the game. We smile at idiots and tolerate condescension and bite our tongues when we want to scream, because the alternative is letting people suffer while we maintain our pride." Naomi thought about that on the drive home, watching Atlanta blur past the Mercedes windows. Everything in Charlotte's world had layers: what you said versus what you meant, what you showed versus what you hid. It was exhausting, but it was also effective. By Friday, Naomi could walk into a room without feeling like an imposter. She knew how to introduce herself, how to describe the foundation's work, how to deflect personal questions. She wasn't Charlotte, not even close, but she was becoming someone who could exist in Charlotte's world without drowning. "You've done well this week," Charlotte said as they wrapped up a late meeting. "Better than I expected, actually." "Thanks, I think." "It's a compliment. Most people take months to adjust to this environment. You did it in days." Charlotte shut down her computer. "Susan tells me you're still staying in your old apartment." "The lease isn't up yet." "Miss Carter," Charlotte's tone was patient. "You're making $60,000 a year now. You can afford better." "I'm not ready to move Mia again. She just adjusted to her school." Charlotte studied her for a long moment. "You're worried this won't last, that I'll change my mind or you'll fail and you'll need to go back." Naomi didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I understand that fear," Charlotte said quietly. "I kept my first apartment for 2 years after I could afford better, just in case. Just in case everything collapsed and I ended up back where I started." She stood gathering her things. "But Miss Carter, at some point you have to commit. You have to believe you deserve the success you're building." "Do you still have that apartment?" Charlotte smiled. "No. I finally sold it when I realized I was holding on to a life I'd already outgrown." She paused at the door. "The question is, how long will you hold on to yours?" That night, Naomi stood in her apartment looking at the water-stained ceiling, the carpet that had been old when she'd moved in the kitchen with barely enough room for 2 people. Mia was asleep in the bedroom they shared, her breathing soft and steady. This place had been safety for 3 years. Not comfort, but safety. Maybe Charlotte was right. Maybe it was time to let go. But not yet. Not until she was sure this new life was real. The first sign of trouble came during a foundation event at the High Museum of Art. Naomi was networking, she'd learned to call it that, instead of awkwardly making conversation with rich people when she felt someone watching her. She turned and froze. Reggie, her ex-husband, stood near the bar wearing a suit she knew he couldn't afford, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Excuse me," she said to the donor she'd been talking to and headed for the bathroom. Her hands shook as she gripped the sink. He'd found her. Of course he'd found her. Her face had been all over the news for weeks. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You look good. Real good. We should talk." Naomi deleted it, but 3 more came immediately. "I've been thinking about Mia. A girl needs her father. Saw you on TV. Living fancy now. We need to discuss arrangements." She blocked the number with trembling fingers. When she returned to the event, Reggie was gone. But the damage was done. Naomi couldn't focus for the rest of the evening, couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. Charlotte noticed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Charlotte guided her to a quiet corner. "What happened?" Naomi wanted to lie again, to say it was just a headache or exhaustion, but Charlotte's expression was too knowing, too concerned. "My ex-husband is here. Was here. He texted me." Charlotte's entire demeanor changed, sharpening into something cold and dangerous. "Show me." Naomi pulled out her phone, scrolling back to the messages before she'd blocked him. Charlotte read them, her jaw tightening with each word. "This is a threat," she said flatly. "He's threatening to go after custody. He has no grounds. Naomi stopped the old shame rising. "He was abusive, but I never pressed charges. I just left. Because pressing charges requires time and money, and lawyers, none of which you had." Charlotte was already pulling out her own phone. "That ends now. I'm getting you the best family attorney in Atlanta. We'll file for a restraining order, document everything, and make sure he can never touch you or Mia again." "I can't afford." "You're not paying for it. I am." Charlotte held up a hand before Naomi could protest. "Not as charity. As protection for a valued employee who's being harassed. It's a legitimate business expense." "Charlotte." "Miss Carter, I'm going to be very clear about something." Charlotte's voice was gentle but firm. "I employ over 3,000 people. I protect them from threats, whether those threats are workplace harassment, corporate espionage, or abusive ex-partners. This is no different." But it felt different. It felt personal in a way that scared Naomi almost as much as Reggie's reappearance. The attorney Miranda Hayes met with them the next morning. She was 50, professional, and radiated competence. "Tell me everything," she said, and Naomi did. The apartment where Reggie would lock her in the bedroom. The night he'd pushed her down the stairs when she was 5 months pregnant. The time he'd grabbed Mia by the arm so hard he left bruises, and that had been the final breaking point. The night she'd packed one bag while he was passed out drunk and disappeared. "You did the right thing leaving," Miranda said when Naomi finished. "But we need to document this properly now. Hospital records, police reports, if any exist, witness statements. Anything we can use to establish a pattern of abuse. I don't want Mia involved in this. She doesn't even remember him." "She won't have to be. Not if we're thorough." Miranda made notes on her tablet. "Has he contacted you directly since the texts?" "No, but he's been watching my apartment building. My neighbor mentioned seeing someone who matches his description hanging around." Miranda exchanged a look with Charlotte. We'll expedite the restraining order. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you stay somewhere else." "I can't just leave." "You can stay with me," Charlotte said. "I have more than enough room, and my home security is extensive." Naomi started to refuse automatically, then stopped. Reggie knew where she lived. He knew where Mia went to school. He was escalating the way he always had. "Just until the restraining order is in place," she said finally. Charlotte's estate felt even larger when Naomi moved in with suitcases and her frightened daughter. A housekeeper named Teresa showed them to a guest suite that was bigger than their entire apartment. "Is this a hotel?" Mia whispered, eyes wide, as she took in the king-sized bed, the sitting area, the bathroom with a tub that could fit 4 people. "It's Mrs. Whitmore's home. We're staying here for a little while." "Why?" "Because your father is a monster who I thought I'd escaped," Naomi thought. "Because I'm terrified he'll try to take you away from me." "Because it's safer here," she said instead. "And because Mrs. Whitmore is being very kind." Charlotte joined them for dinner that evening. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad that Teresa had prepared. Mia was shy at first, but Charlotte had a knack for talking to children that surprised Naomi. "What are you reading?" Charlotte asked, noticing the library book Mia clutched. "The Secret Garden." Mia's voice was barely audible. "That's one of my favorites. Have you gotten to the part with the robin yet?" Mia nodded enthusiastically, and soon they were deep in conversation about books and gardens and whether magic was real. Naomi watched them, something tight in her chest, loosening slightly. For 3 years, it had been just her and Mia against the world. Having someone else care, someone else engage, it was both comforting and terrifying. After Mia went to bed, Naomi found Charlotte in her study, working despite the late hour. "Thank you," Naomi said from the doorway, "for dinner, for this, for everything." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though." Naomi stepped inside. "You've given me more in 3 weeks than anyone has in my entire life. I don't know how to repay that." "You're already repaying it by doing excellent work at the foundation." Charlotte saved her document and turned to face Naomi fully. "But Miss Carter, I want you to understand something. This isn't transactional. You don't owe me anything beyond professional competence. The help I'm giving you with housing, with lawyers, with your ex-husband, that's separate from work. That's just what people should do for each other." "Most people don't." "No," Charlotte agreed. "They don't. Which is why I'm making sure you learn a different way." She paused. "I told you I had a daughter. I didn't tell you that I lost custody of her during my divorce." Naomi drew in a sharp breath. "My ex-husband had better lawyers, more money, and a willingness to lie under oath about my parenting. He convinced a judge that my working long hours made me unfit, that my business would always come before my child." Charlotte's expression was carefully neutral, but pain flickered beneath it. "By the time I had enough money to fight back properly, Emily was 13 and refused to see me. She'd believed his version of events for so long that nothing I said mattered. I'm so sorry. I'm telling you this because I won't let what happened to me happen to you. Reggie can have all the money and lawyers in the world, and it won't matter. You're not fighting this battle alone." Naomi's throat tightened. "Where is Emily now?" "I don't know. She's 32. We haven't spoken in 14 years. Charlotte's voice was matter-of-fact, but the hurt was palpable. "I send letters on her birthday. They're never returned, but they're never answered either. That's my consequence for choosing my business over my daughter, or at least that's how she sees it. You were trying to survive. Yes. But she needed a mother more than I needed a company." Charlotte turned back to her computer. "Don't let work consume you the way I did, Miss Carter. Mia needs you present, not just providing. That's a mistake I can't undo." Naomi left Charlotte's study feeling like she'd glimpsed something raw and painful, a wound that had never fully healed. She checked on Mia, fast asleep, sprawled across the huge bed, and then stood at the window of their borrowed room, looking out at the manicured gardens below. Charlotte had lost her daughter to ambition and circumstance. Naomi would fight with everything she had to make sure Mia never felt abandoned or second best. But Charlotte was right about one thing. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in family court. Naomi dressed carefully in one of her new suit's armor against the battle ahead. Miranda had prepared her extensively what to expect, what to say, how to stay calm, even when Reggie's lawyer attacked her character. "Remember," Miranda said in the car, "this is just a preliminary hearing for the restraining order. We present evidence of harassment and potential danger. The custody issue won't be addressed today." "But he filed for custody. I saw the papers. He filed a motion, yes, but that will be heard separately. And frankly, he doesn't have a case. He's been absent from Mia's life for 3 years, has a history of violence, and has no stable income. The filing is an intimidation tactic. Naomi wanted to believe her, but fear sat heavy in her stomach. Charlotte had wanted to come, but Naomi had refused. This was already enough of a spectacle, without adding a billionaire to the mix. Susan drove instead, a silent, steady presence. The courthouse was everything Naomi feared: institutional cold, overwhelming. Reggie sat on a bench outside the courtroom with his lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. When Reggie saw her, he smiled, not warm, but triumphant. "Don't react," Miranda murmured. "Don't give him anything." Inside the courtroom, Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with reading glasses and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. She listened as Miranda presented their case, the text messages, witness statements from Naomi's former neighbor who'd seen the abuse medical records from an ER visit where Naomi had claimed she'd fallen, but the doctor had documented injuries consistent with domestic violence. Reggie's lawyer missed her. Patterson stood to object repeatedly, but the evidence was damning. Then it was Reggie's turn to present. "Your Honor," Patterson began, "my client admits to past mistakes. He was young, stressed, dealing with unemployment and depression. He made errors in judgment that he deeply regrets." Naomi's hands clenched in her lap. "However," Patterson continued, "he's turned his life around. He's been sober for 18 months, has steady employment, and has completed an anger management course. He simply wants to be part of his daughter's life." The judge looked at Reggie. "Mr. Carter, do you have anything to add?" Reggie stood, and Naomi hated how normal he looked. How reasonable. "Your Honor, I was a terrible husband. I know that. I hurt Naomi, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I love my daughter. I've been trying to get clean to be better so I could be a father she deserves. All I want is a chance." It was a good performance. Naomi could see the judge softening slightly. Miranda stood. "Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Carter claims he's been working on himself for 18 months. Yet 2 weeks ago, he sent harassing text messages to Miss Carter and has been surveilling her residence. That doesn't sound like someone who's changed." "The texts were an attempt to open communication," Patterson argued. "Poorly executed, perhaps, but not threatening." "We need to discuss arrangements. After 3 years of absence isn't opening communication. It's establishing control." Miranda pulled up the messages on her tablet, projecting them on the courtroom screen. "And when Miss Carter blocked him, he didn't respect that boundary. He escalated to physical surveillance." The judge studied the messages, then looked at Reggie. "Mr. Carter, why did you choose to contact your ex-wife after 3 years?" Reggie hesitated. "I saw her on the news. I realized I'd wasted so much time. I wanted to make things right." "Or," Miranda interjected, "he saw that Miss Carter had improved her circumstances and saw an opportunity. Your Honor, my client left an abusive marriage with nothing but her daughter and a determination to survive. She's worked 2 jobs, lived in poverty, and never once asked her ex-husband for support. Now that she's achieved professional success, he suddenly wants to be involved. That's not fair," Reggie said, and for a moment Naomi saw the anger he usually kept hidden. "I'm her father." "You're biologically her father," Miranda corrected, "but you haven't been a parent. You haven't paid child support, haven't sent birthday cards, haven't made any attempt to be part of Mia's life until you saw a potential financial benefit." "That's not true. "Mr. Carter," the judge said sharply, "you'll have your turn. Sit down." The hearing lasted another hour. Patterson tried to paint Naomi as bitter and vindictive, someone who was using her new connections to shut out a reformed man. But every time he attacked, Miranda countered with facts. Reggie's employment history spotty. At best, his completion of anger management dropped out after 3 sessions. His sobriety unverified and unsupported by any treatment program. Finally, Judge Morrison removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "I've heard enough," she said. "Mr. Carter, your concern for your daughter might be genuine, but your approach has been inappropriate and alarming. Miss Carter has legitimate reasons to fear contact with you." Relief flooded through Naomi so strongly she felt dizzy. "I'm granting a temporary restraining order," the judge continued. "You are not to contact Miss Carter or her daughter directly or indirectly. You are not to come within 500 feet of their residence, workplace, or the child's school. This order will stand for 6 months, at which point we'll review." "Your Honor," Patterson started. "As for the custody motion, that hearing is scheduled for 8 weeks from now." Mr. Carter, if you want any chance of being part of your daughter's life, I suggest you use that time to actually do the work you claim you've done. Get into a real treatment program, maintain steady employment, and most importantly, demonstrate that you respect boundaries." The judge's gaze was stern. "Do not contact Miss Carter. Do not send gifts or letters to the child. If you truly care about being a father, prove it by following the rules." The gavel came down, and it was over. Outside the courthouse, Naomi leaned against the building and tried to breathe normally. Miranda was on her phone already drafting a formal notification of the restraining order. Susan waited by the car, giving Naomi space. "You did well in there," Miranda said, tucking her phone away. "You stayed calm, dignified. That matters. He's not going to stop." "Probably not. But now we have legal backing. If he violates this order, he goes to jail, and his custody case becomes impossible." Miranda squeezed Naomi's shoulder. "I know it doesn't feel like a victory, but it is. You're protected now." Protected. The word felt fragile, easily shattered, but it was more than she'd had this morning. Charlotte called as they drove back. "Miranda already briefed me. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." Naomi watched Atlanta blur past the window. "He looks so normal, Charlotte, so reasonable, like a different person." "Abusers are often charming in public. That's how they get away with it for so long." Charlotte's voice was gentle. "But you survived him once, and you'll survive this too. We'll make sure of it." "I can't keep living in your house forever." "Why not? I have plenty of room, and Mia seems happy." "Because it's not sustainable. Because," Naomi struggled to articulate the fear, "because I need to know I can take care of us on my own, without depending on you or anyone else." There was a long pause. "I understand that. But Miss Carter accepting help doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart." "I know. I need to feel capable." "You are capable. You've always been capable. Having support doesn't change that." Charlotte's tone softened. "But when you're ready to move, we'll find you a place. Somewhere safe with good security." "Deal." "Deal." That evening, Naomi picked Mia up from school herself. Charlotte had arranged for a driver to handle transportation. But today, Naomi needed to see her daughter with her own eyes. Mia ran to her backpack, bouncing. "Mommy, Miss Chen said I got 100 on my spelling test." "That's wonderful, baby." Naomi hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her daughter's shampoo. "I'm so proud of you." "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" They stopped at a local shop, and Mia chattered about her day over a chocolate cone. Naomi watched her, this beautiful, resilient child who'd adapted to every upheaval without complaint. Mia would never know her father, not really. And maybe that was a tragedy in some abstract way, but mostly it was a mercy. She would grow up without violence, without fear, without ever thinking it was normal for someone who loved you to hurt you. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Naomi wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm just happy, sweetheart. Sometimes people cry when they're happy." "That's weird." "Yeah," Naomi agreed, smiling. "It kind of is." They drove back to Charlotte's house, their temporary home, and found Charlotte waiting with dinner already prepared. Teresa had made chicken and vegetables, and they ate together like a makeshift family. Later, after Mia was asleep, Naomi found Charlotte on the back patio, looking out at the darkened garden. "Thank you," Naomi said, "for Miranda, for the house, for everything." "You've thanked me enough." "I haven't, though." Naomi sat in the chair beside her. 3 weeks ago, I was invisible. I cleaned floors and worried about bills and thought that was just how life would always be. And then you," she stopped, emotion thick in her throat. "You saw me. Not what I could do for you, but just me. Naomi, a person worth investing in." Charlotte turned to look at her, and in the dim light, her expression was soft. "You saved my life, Miss Carter. The least I could do was help you save yours. It's more than that. You know it is." "Yes," Charlotte said quietly. "I suppose it is." They sat in comfortable silence, two women from different worlds who'd found unexpected connection in crisis. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the board meeting Reggie's inevitable next move, the constant pressure of proving herself. But tonight, Naomi let herself feel safe, just for tonight. The boardroom at Whitmore Technologies looked exactly as intimidating as Naomi had imagined. 20-foot ceilings, walls of glass overlooking downtown Atlanta, a table that could seat 30 people comfortably. 16 board members gathered there now, along with executives and department heads. And Naomi, who'd been invited to present the foundation's quarterly report. "This is your moment," Charlotte had said that morning. "Show them why I chose you." Now, standing at the head of the table with her presentation loaded and her hands only slightly trembling, Naomi wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake accepting this job. Charles Brenner sat 3 seats from the end, his expression carefully neutral. He'd been professional toward Naomi over the past 2 weeks, surface-level friendly offering help with projects, but she didn't trust it. Charlotte had warned her that Brenner played long games. "Thank you all for having me." Naomi began clicking to the first slide. "Today, I'll be presenting our Q3 Impact Report for the Whitmore Foundation, with particular focus on our community outreach initiatives." She walked them through the number 700 families receiving housing assistance, 2,000 children accessing after-school programs, 93 small businesses receiving microloans. For each statistic, she provided context, not just data, but stories of real people whose lives had changed. "This is Janelle Martinez," Naomi said, showing a photo of a woman in her 30s. 6 months ago, she was working 3 part-time jobs and living in her car with her 2 kids. Through our emergency housing program, she received temporary shelter childcare support and job training. Today, she's a certified medical assistant with full-time employment and her own apartment. She's one of 700 similar stories this quarter. The board members listened with polite attention, but Naomi could see some were checking phones, others whispering to colleagues. Then Brenner spoke. "These are impressive numbers, Miss Carter, but I have concerns about sustainability." Here it comes, Naomi thought. "We've increased foundation spending by 40% this quarter." Brenner continued pulling up his own tablet. "While I appreciate the emotional appeal of these stories, we need to discuss fiscal responsibility. Can we actually maintain this level of giving?" The increase reflects strategic expansion into underserved communities. Naomi responded grateful for the hours Charlotte had spent preparing her for exactly this question. "We identified gaps in services and allocated resources accordingly. And our donor base has grown by 23% specifically because of our transparent impact reporting. Donor growth is unpredictable." Actually, it's not. Naomi clicked to her next slide showing donation trends. When donors see concrete results, they give more. Our average donation size is up 37% because contributors trust that their money is being used effectively. Charlotte, sitting at the far end of the table, allowed herself a small smile. Brenner tried a different angle. "I notice a significant portion of our funding is going to programs that directly benefit single mothers. Given your personal background, Miss Carter, I have to question whether there's bias in resource allocation." The room went very quiet. Naomi kept her expression neutral, just as Miranda had taught her. Single mothers make up one of the largest demographics in poverty, particularly among women of color. Investing in them creates ripple effects. Stable housing means kids do better in school. Job training means sustainable income. Childcare support means mothers can work full-time. It's not bias, Mr. Brenner. It's effective targeting. Still, the optics. The optics, Charlotte interjected her voice, cutting through Brenner's objection like a blade, are that we're actually helping people instead of just talking about it. Continue, Miss Carter. Naomi presented for another 20 minutes, answering questions about program effectiveness, partnership development, and long-term goals. She stumbled once when asked about expansion plans, but recovered quickly with Charlotte's slight nod of encouragement. When she finished the board chair, Evelyn Park smiled warmly. "Thank you, Miss Carter. That was an excellent presentation. I particularly appreciate the individual narratives alongside the data." "I agree," another board member added. "This is exactly the kind of work that makes our foundation meaningful." But Brenner wasn't done. "Mrs. Whitmore, if I might address the larger issue at hand." "Let's table any additional discussion for the executive session," Evelyn said smoothly. "Miss Carter, you're excused. Excellent work." Naomi gathered her materials and left, but not before catching the look between Brenner and his allies. They'd been planning this moment, and her presentation was just the opening act. Susan was waiting outside the boardroom. "Charlotte wants you to stay close. Don't leave the building." "What's happening?" "Brenner's making his move. She expected it, but—" Susan's professional mask slipped slightly. "Just stay close." Naomi waited in Charlotte's office trying to work, but mostly watching the clock. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Finally, the door opened. Charlotte walked in, and Naomi knew immediately that something was wrong. Not defeated. Charlotte would never look defeated, but strained. "What happened?" Charlotte poured herself a scotch from the bar in her office, something Naomi had never seen her do. "Brenner proposed I step down as CEO. Temporarily, he claimed, for health reasons. I'm still recovering from the accident, and he's concerned about my decision-making capacity. That's insane. You're fine. I am, but he's using your hiring as evidence of impaired judgment. Charlotte took a sip, her expression grim. A janitor with no relevant experience given a six-figure salary and significant responsibilities to some board members that looks like either a mental breakdown or inappropriate favoritism. Naomi felt sick. I should resign. If me being here is causing problems, you're not going anywhere. Charlotte's voice was steel. Brenner doesn't actually care about your qualifications. He cares that I made a decision, without consulting him, that I exercise power he thinks he should have. Your hiring is just a convenient excuse. But your position is secure for now. Evelyn shut down the vote, said we'd revisit in 30 days after an independent review of foundation effectiveness. Charlotte set down her glass. Which means we have 30 days to prove you were the right choice. 30 days to show results so clear that even Brenner's allies can't dismiss them. No pressure, Naomi muttered. Exactly the right amount of pressure. Charlotte's smile was sharp. Welcome to corporate warfare, Miss Carter. This is where we fight. The next 4 weeks were brutal. Naomi worked 12-hour days, documenting every program, every success story, every dollar spent, and its impact. Charlotte brought in an independent consulting firm to audit the foundation's operations. Together, they built a case that couldn't be disputed. But Brenner wasn't idle either. Articles appeared questioning Naomi's past, her evictions, her fired jobs, her reliance on public assistance. Nothing illegal, but painted in the worst possible light. Blog posts suggested Charlotte was having an inappropriate relationship with Naomi, that the whole situation was a scandal waiting to break. Don't read the comments, Susan advised, but Naomi couldn't help herself. The cruelty was stunning. People who'd never met her were convinced she was a con artist, a gold digger, someone taking advantage of a vulnerable older woman. The worst part was how they talked about Mia. Suggestions that she should be in foster care, that Naomi was an unfit mother, that a child deserved better than a parent who'd manipulated her way into wealth. Those comments made Naomi want to quit, to disappear back into anonymity where no one cared enough to judge. But then she'd visit one of the foundation's partner sites, a shelter for domestic violence survivors, a job training center, a youth program, and see the real impact of their work. She'd meet women like Janelle who'd turned their lives around with just a little support, women who'd been where Naomi had been. You're not just doing this for yourself anymore, Charlotte said when Naomi admitted she was struggling. You're doing it for everyone who comes after you, every woman who needs to know that circumstances don't define capability. The independent audit was scheduled for the Friday before the board meeting. 2 auditors spent 3 days reviewing foundation operations, interviewing beneficiaries, examining financial records. When they finished, they requested a meeting with Charlotte and Naomi together. Your foundation is remarkably well run, the lead auditor, a woman named Patricia, said without preamble. In my 20 years of nonprofit evaluation, I've rarely seen this level of efficiency and impact. Your cost per beneficiary ratio is extraordinary. Relief flooded through Naomi. More importantly, Patricia continued, Miss Carter's programs show sophisticated understanding of systemic poverty. The way she's structured support services, layering housing assistance with job training, childcare, and mental health resources demonstrates practical knowledge that frankly exceeds what I typically see from people with advanced degrees in this field. So your recommendation, Charlotte asked. Not only should Miss Carter keep her position, she should be given expanded authority. Her approach is working, and restricting it would be detrimental to the foundation's mission. That evening, Charlotte took Naomi to dinner at a quiet restaurant, just the 2 of them. We won, Charlotte said, raising her wine glass. Patricia's report is unimpeachable. Brenner has no grounds to challenge your position now. He'll find other ways to cause problems. Probably. But that's not today's concern. Charlotte studied Naomi across the table. How are you feeling, really? Naomi considered the question. Exhausted, angry that I had to prove my worth 10 times over when a man with a degree would have been accepted immediately. But also, she paused, also proud. I did the work. I earned this. You did more than earn it. You exceeded every expectation. Charlotte's expression softened. I need to tell you something. The board meeting on Monday isn't just about reviewing Patricia's report. What else? I'm announcing my retirement. Full retirement, not stepping down temporarily. I'll remain on the board, but I'm done being CEO. Naomi's stomach dropped. But you love this company. I do, but I'm 73 years old and I nearly died 2 months ago. That tends to clarify priorities. Charlotte smiled slightly. I want to spend my remaining years actually living instead of just working. Travel. Read. Maybe repair the relationship with my daughter, if that's even possible. Who will replace you? Marcus Reed, our CFO. He's brilliant and fair, and he despises Brenner. The transition will be smooth. Charlotte reached across the table, covering Naomi's hand with her own. But I need to know you'll be okay. With me gone, Brenner will try again. I can handle Brenner. I know you can, but you shouldn't have to alone. Charlotte withdrew her hand, pulling an envelope from her purse. This is for you. Don't open it until you get home. Charlotte, trust me. That night in the guest room that had become home, Naomi opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a set of keys. Dear Naomi, by the time you read this, I'll have announced my retirement to the board. I'm ready for that next chapter, but I needed to ensure you'd be secure before I step away. The keys are to a house in Virginia Highland. Nothing extravagant, just a safe, comfortable place for you and Mia. It's in your name, fully paid, with a trust set up to cover property taxes for the next 20 years. Before you protest, understand that this isn't charity. It's an investment in the future of the foundation. I need my community outreach director to have stability, and I refuse to let housing insecurity distract you from your work. You've taught me something over these past 2 months. You've reminded me that generosity isn't about grand gestures or public recognition. It's about seeing someone struggle and simply choosing to help. That's what you did for me in the hospital. You saw a dying woman and chose to help. No calculation, no expectation of reward, just human compassion. I'm trying to learn from your example. The board will approve your promotion to senior director on Monday. It comes with a raise and expanded authority. You'll have the power to shape foundation policy, to determine how we allocate resources to create real change. That's not a gift. That's recognition of what you've already proven you can do. One more thing, I've added you to my personal will as co-executor with my attorneys. If something happens to me, you'll have a voice in how my estate is distributed. I trust you to remember what matters, not corporate interests or stock prices, but real people with real needs. Thank you for saving my life, both literally and figuratively. With respect and affection, Charlotte Naomi read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she went to check on Mia, who was fast asleep, safe and protected and loved. Tomorrow would bring the board meeting Brenner's next scheme, new challenges and battles. But tonight, Naomi allowed herself to feel what she'd been afraid to acknowledge: hope. Real, tangible hope for a future beyond survival. The board meeting on Monday was nothing like Naomi expected. Charlotte walked into the boardroom looking regal, her silver hair swept back, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than Naomi used to make in 6 months. But there was something different about her, too. A lightness, as if she'd already let go of the weight she'd been carrying. Patricia presented her audit findings, first methodically destroying every argument Brenner had made against Naomi's competence. The numbers were irrefutable: program effectiveness, up 42%, beneficiary satisfaction at 96%, cost efficiency exceeding industry standards. Miss Carter's approach is innovative precisely because it's grounded in lived experience, Patricia concluded. She understands the population she serves in ways that research and theory simply cannot replicate. The foundation would be foolish to lose her. Evelyn Park nodded approvingly. Thank you, Patricia. That's exactly what we needed to hear. She turned to Naomi. Miss Carter, on behalf of the board, I'd like to apologize for the scrutiny you've faced. Your work speaks for itself, and we're grateful to have you. Brenner's expression was stone, but he said nothing. Then Charlotte stood. Before we move to other business, I have an announcement. Effective December 31st, I will be stepping down as CEO of Whitmore Technologies. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction, but Charlotte raised her hand for silence. This isn't a health issue or a crisis. It's a choice. I've given this company 45 years of my life, and it's thrived, but I'm ready to focus on other things: the foundation, my family, the life I've neglected while building this empire. Her gaze swept the room. Marcus Reed will assume the CEO position with my full support and recommendation. The transition will be seamless. More questions, more protests, but Charlotte was unmoved. She'd made her decision, and as always, it was final. After the meeting, Brenner cornered Naomi in the hallway. You think you've won, he said quietly, his professional mask finally slipping. But Charlotte won't be here to protect you forever. Eventually, you'll have to stand on your own. I've been standing on my own my entire life, Naomi replied evenly. The difference now is I have resources. That doesn't make me weak, Mr. Brenner. It makes me dangerous. His eyes narrowed. We'll see. Yes, Naomi agreed. We will. 3 months later, Naomi stood in the living room of her new house watching Mia arrange books on a shelf. Their furniture was sparse but comfortable, mostly second-hand pieces that Naomi had picked out herself, refusing to let Charlotte furnish the place. This one is mine, Mia declared, claiming the entire bottom shelf for her library books. That's fair, Naomi said, smiling. But we need to leave room for groceries in the kitchen. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a backyard where Mia could play, a neighborhood with good schools, and sidewalks where people walked their dogs. Nothing extravagant but safe. Theirs. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Charlotte stood on the porch holding a potted plant. Housewarming gift, she said. Teresa insists every home needs something green. Naomi let her in, and they walked through the space together, Charlotte admiring Mia's careful arrangement of her room, the kitchen where Naomi had already hung up Mia's artwork from school. You've made it yours, Charlotte observed. That's good. They sat on the back porch while Mia played in the yard, creating an elaborate fairy house from sticks and leaves. I heard from Emily, Charlotte said suddenly. Naomi turned to her in surprise. Your daughter. She called last week, said she'd seen the news about my retirement and wanted to talk. Charlotte's expression was carefully controlled, but Naomi could see the emotion beneath. We had coffee yesterday, 2 hours. It was, she paused. It was a start. Charlotte, that's wonderful. Maybe. She's still angry, still has a lot of unresolved feelings about her childhood, but she's willing to try, and that's more than I expected. Charlotte looked out at Mia. She asked about you, actually, about the janitor who saved me. What did you tell her? That you taught me something important about what really matters, that success means nothing if you're alone at the end. Charlotte glanced at Naomi. She wants to meet you sometime, if you're comfortable with that. I'd be honored. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, 2 women who'd found an unlikely friendship in crisis. Charlotte would always be a mentor, an advocate, someone who'd opened doors Naomi hadn't known existed, but she'd also become something simpler and more profound, a friend. I have something for you, Charlotte said, pulling out a small box. Before you protest, it's not expensive. Well, not monetarily. Inside was a key on a simple chain. It's to a cabin in Vermont, Charlotte explained. The one I mentioned in my letter. It's been in my family for 60 years, and it's where I go when I need to remember who I am underneath all the corporate identity. I want you to have access to it. Whenever you need to escape, to breathe, to just be, it's yours. Charlotte, I can't. Yes, you can. Consider it payment for what you've given me. I gave you blood. That's not. You gave me so much more than blood, Naomi. Charlotte's voice was soft. You gave me perspective, purpose, a reason to think about legacy beyond stock prices and board meetings. You reminded me that the best investment I could make was in actual people, not just ideas about helping people. Naomi took the key, holding it tight. Thank you for everything. The thanks goes both ways. That evening, after Charlotte left and Mia was in bed, Naomi sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and thought about how much had changed in 4 months. She had a job that mattered, doing work that actually helped people. She had a home where Mia was safe and happy. She had friends, real friends, not just coworkers or acquaintances, but people who cared about her well-being. And she had something she'd never had before: options. The freedom to make choices instead of just reacting to circumstances. Her phone buzzed. A text from Miranda: custody hearing canceled. Reggie withdrew his motion. He's not going to bother you again. Relief and vindication washed through her in equal measure. Reggie had finally realized he couldn't win, couldn't control her anymore. That chapter of her life was truly closed. She texted back, "Thank you for everything." Miranda's response was immediate. "You did the hard part. I just filed paperwork." But that wasn't true. Miranda had given her legal protection. Charlotte had given her opportunity. Susan had given her practical support. Teresa had made her feel welcome. Even Jerome, the media consultant, had taught her how to protect herself from public scrutiny. People had helped her, and she'd let them. That was its own kind of strength. 6 months after that first desperate blood donation, Naomi stood at a podium in the newly renamed Whitmore Carter Center for Women and Children. The building had been Charlotte's final project as CEO, a comprehensive resource center offering job training, childcare, mental health services, and emergency housing assistance. Everything Naomi had wished existed when she'd been struggling alone. Now it was real. Charlotte sat in the front row, elegant as always, with Emily beside her. They didn't hold hands or touch, but they'd shown up together, and that was progress. Mia sat with Susan, wearing a new dress and looking impossibly grown up. 4 years ago, Naomi began, her voice steady. I was working 2 jobs and still couldn't afford my daughter's medication. I was 1 crisis away from homelessness, 1 emergency from complete disaster. I felt invisible, like society had decided my worth based on my bank account instead of my humanity. She looked out at the audience, politicians, donors, community leaders, and most importantly, the women who'd be served by this center. Today, we open a place where no one is invisible, where single mothers aren't seen as burdens, but as people with incredible potential, where poverty is treated as a circumstance to overcome, not a moral failing. Naomi's voice strengthened. This center exists because Charlotte Whitmore believed that everyone deserves a chance. Not just the educated, not just the connected, but everyone. She glanced at Charlotte, who nodded encouragingly. But it also exists because I learned to accept help, to let people invest in me when I'd spent my whole life convinced I had to do everything alone. That's the real lesson here. We're not meant to survive in isolation. We're meant to support each other, to lift each other up, to create systems where everyone has access to opportunity. After the ceremony, Naomi found Charlotte in the quiet of the center's library, running her fingers along the spines of books. It's perfect, Charlotte said. Exactly what I envisioned. It's what you built, Naomi corrected. I just helped execute your vision. No, Charlotte turned to face her. I provided resources. You provided the blueprint. Every program here reflects your understanding of what people actually need, not what wealthy donors think they need. That distinction matters. Naomi smiled. Then I guess we make a good team. The best. Charlotte's expression grew serious. I won't be around forever, Naomi. I need to know the foundation will continue this work after I'm gone. Don't talk like that. I'm being practical. I'm 74. I have maybe 10 good years left, maybe less. Charlotte took Naomi's hands. Promise me you'll keep fighting. For every woman who's where you used to be, for every child who deserves better, for everyone who's been told they don't matter, promise me. I promise, Naomi said and meant it. That night, Naomi drove Mia to the cabin in Vermont for their first visit. The place was small and rustic, surrounded by trees with a view of mountains in the distance. No internet, no TV, just peace and quiet and space to breathe. They built a fire in the fireplace and roasted marshmallows. Mia told stories about school, about her friends, about the book she was writing, about a girl who could talk to animals. Mom, Mia said as they watched the fire, are we rich now? Naomi considered the question. They had enough, more than enough by her old standards. Security, comfort, opportunity. But rich. We're okay, she said. We have what we need, and we can help other people sometimes. That's better than being rich. Good. Mia snuggled closer. I like helping people. Like you helped Mrs. Whitmore. Yeah, baby. Like that. Later, after Mia was asleep, Naomi stood on the cabin's porch and looked up at the stars. More stars than she'd ever seen in the city, brilliant and infinite against the darkness. She thought about Charlotte, who'd given her so much, but who'd also learned from her. She thought about the women who'd use the new center, who'd find pathways out of poverty because resources existed that hadn't been there before. She thought about Mia growing up with security and opportunity, never having to wonder if they'd have food tomorrow or a place to sleep. And she thought about herself, Naomi Carter, who'd started as invisible and had somehow become someone who mattered, not because of money or status, but because she'd chosen to help when it would have been easier to walk away. The world wasn't fair. It probably never would be. But maybe that meant the small acts of fairness mattered more. The moments when someone chose kindness over cruelty, generosity over greed, connection over isolation. Maybe that's what legacy really meant, not buildings with your name on them or wealth passed down through generations, but the ripple effects of choosing to care. Naomi had saved Charlotte's life with her blood. Charlotte had saved Naomi's life with her belief. And together, they were building something that would save lives long after both of them were gone. That was enough. That was everything. Inside the cabin, Mia stirred in her sleep safe and warm and loved. Tomorrow they'd explore the woods, read books by the fire, exist in peace without judgment or scrutiny. But tonight, Naomi let herself feel grateful for the impossible journey that had led here from desperation to dignity, from invisibility to impact, from survival to something that felt dangerously close to joy. The stars watched overhead, brilliant and infinite, as Naomi whispered into the night, "Thank you, Charlotte." And in Atlanta, in her own home, Charlotte sat with her daughter and talked about the past, the future, and the possibility of forgiveness. Two women connected by blood and choice and the radical act of believing in each other. Two women who'd learned that sometimes the greatest strength is accepting that you don't have to be strong alone. That was the real story. Not rags to riches, but isolation to community. Not powerless to powerful, but invisible to seen. Not one dramatic moment, but 1,000 small choices to keep going, keep fighting, keep believing that tomorrow could be better than today. And in the end, it was.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.